The fact of the matter is, the intelligence community has indicated that there's no specific credible plot against the mall, and that essentially this is a reaction to a propaganda video that was put out by a terrorist group in Africa.
Has the time come for American Muslims to look inward and inside their own places of worship and prove they are doing more than lip service to help the cause of stopping the homegrown and home-based radical effort? It's a pleasure to welcome back to MidPoint from the Darul Uloom Institute and Islamic Training Center in South Florida, serving a growing Muslim community in the region. He is the founder and spiritual guide whom we have found to be very forthcoming with his comments. Shaikh Shafayat Mohamed joins us here in the studio. Shaikh, it's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here with you also.
Since last time we spoke, a lot has happened here because now we have the threat against malls in America, the Mall of America in Minneapolis and others now, the ISIS-connected threat, if you will. Have you noticed in your place of worship and in your community, has there been any sort of backlash from the local community? Have there been threats? Has anybody come out and basically made your life difficult?
Well, actually at our institute we did not have any such experience, but we have been hearing in the United States here that there have been some Islamic centers and mosques that have been having such experiences of people trying to attack the Muslims and trying to attack the mosques, etc.
What is it that you tell your people when it comes down to being confronted perhaps by this? Because the news is right out in front of you every single day. So what's your advice to them as people come up and react when they hear that somebody is Muslim?
Well, as I said last time in our interview, it's very important that Muslims try to assimilate and integrate with this society. And the more we get involved with people of other cultures and other faiths, that will sort of make things much clearer and remove a lot of misconception and misunderstanding, and will put like terrorists on a different scale and put the general Muslim public on a different scale. And because we are not involved, I tell my people all the time, get involved in interfaith activities, get involved with other social activities. Working a job here, going to school is not sufficient. We need to get involved with other communities, publicly, professionally, as opposed to seeking our own educational and financial interests. And I think if we do that, a lot of the, Americans, or maybe I should put it in a better way, other cultures and other faiths will begin to see Muslims in a different light.
But do you see and do you feel the Muslim population in the community doing that? Or are they pushing back? Because quite frankly, what you're talking about here offends some people. Because I've spoken to Muslims who say, I don't need to do that. That's not my job to do that. It's the job of the other people to accept me for who I am.
Well, I don't support that concept. Actually, I have a disagreement with some Muslims on a certain area that it's totally strange. I do not agree that Muslims should build, for example, on the same issue we're discussing, Muslims should build schools for secular academic education in their own Islamic compound. The students should go to the regular American schools, integrate, get involved with the other people, grow up with these students. These students are the mayors and the commissioners and the politicians and the law officers. They're the ones that will become those people tomorrow. And when they know of Muslim students who are their friends and work together, it helps to build a bond.
But you know that you will hear from a lot of Muslims who will say that's absolutely wrong, because we need to teach our children the culture. We need to keep them within our own community. How do you fight that?
Well, we have that example. The reason why I'm saying that, I'm not just giving you an idea. I demonstrate that at our institute. We cater for students who go to regular academic schools. They go to school Monday to Friday. In the afternoons, they come to our institute and they seek Islamic education. On weekends, they study their Islamic education. But they are out there in the society. They go to school, they mix, they mingle. People know them, they know others. So it creates a better bond. And what I have seen happening in some of the Muslim territories, the students go to school within an Islamic or Muslim compound, and they grow up in a very close-minded atmosphere. When they get out, they're totally lost in some cases.
What you are talking about is completely against what so many Muslims around the country would indicate they want. Now, you hold on just a couple minutes here because I'm going to take a break, come back, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about this because you are discussing a fascinating idea here that some people would disagree with. Break and we return. Let's take on these ISIS methods as well of creating radicals around the world and the psychological manner in which they seek to divide Americans, because we're hearing something here that basically could help solve a lot of issues. We continue right here on MidPoint. Welcome back to MidPoint. The founder and principal of Darul Uloom Institute in Pembroke Pines, Florida. He lectures around the world on Islam, interfaith issues, and cultural diversity. Sheikh Shafayat Mohamed joins us here in the studio. Sheikh, let's continue where we were. You realize, of course, that what you are discussing is something that we have heard from many hardcore Muslims, and we'll use that word, radical extremists, who would say that's the wrong thing to do. There are people who would be very angry at you for doing this. Are you prepared for the backlash? Because let's face it, there are a lot of Muslims in this country and around the world who do not want to rock the boat because they are afraid of what the radical extremists in their faith will do to them.
I know, but at some time, because of the sort of problems we are facing in the world nowadays, it is very important, and I think this is one of the most important times that scholars and Islamic leaders need to come out and be very vocal on these issues, and as we say, separate the sheep from the wolf.
There are so many people that I've spoken to who would tell me, and I've heard both sides of the story. Some will say when it comes to in the mosque themselves, that the mosque is very peaceful, that the people there are not looking for trouble. However, you will hear other government reports who will tell you that the mosques are the places that harbor the potential terrorists and the people who are trying to hide from society. And there are those who say that the Muslims themselves need to look inward, need to find the people, the potential bad guys, the potential bad girls, if you will, and they need to root them out, ferret them out, kick them out, maybe even turn them into authorities. Would you suggest that?
Well, first to begin, I don't support the fact that the mosque breed terrorism or breed terrorists.
You don't believe that?
I don't believe that, but I do believe that there are some radical clerics or some individuals who individually would try to recruit and brainwash people towards terrorism, this sort of militant Islamic style nowadays.
Is it then your responsibility as a leader, as a cleric yourself, and your communities, to say that if you know one of these people, if you have someone who's involved, make the authorities aware?
Of course, I think it's the responsibility of every Muslim, because such a thing will harm everyone, as we see happening right now. Muslims are being jeopardized because of this sort of misrepresentation. One or two guys go around with this terrorist mentality, and it tarnishes the entire mosque, the entire community, the entire Muslim world. So therefore, it is the responsibility of every Muslim to ensure these sort of radical-minded people don't prevail.
Then what do we do in this society to keep the young people from becoming radicalized, if you will? Let's look, for instance, at ISIS. Very well done with their marketing and their PR. They put out videos, quite frankly, that show how people get ready to become terrorists. And they're pretty mild, if you will. People dressing as bushes for camouflage and people hitting some of this right here. This is very amateurish. But how do you then convince the young people in your community not to become part of this? How do you keep them from falling under this spell?
Well, it has to be education.
What kind of education?
Religious scholars, Islamic scholars need, or the Islamic leaders need to have conferences and programs and seminars to educate our young people on this aspect, that they should not get involved in terrorism.
But how do you get the young people to listen, though, Sheikh? Because let's face it, 15, 16, 20-year-olds, I was one once, so were you. We didn't listen much when we were that age.
I know, we had a sort of rebellious sort of spirit.
Yes, and they still do.
Well, not only terrorism need to be spoken about, I think they need to also educate them on America, the West, and what's happening, on the truth, you know, separate falsehood from truth, because a lot of times these terrorist-minded people brainwash these young people with certain aspects and a one-sided picture. That's why I said that, you know, I recommend that people start sending their kids to regular school so they will get to understand the real picture out there. When they're in a closed walls, within their territory, their school, their people,
they're isolated.
That's all they're seeing and hearing. So they hear one type of news, they don't hear the other angle of things, and therefore they become angry. And sometimes, I mean, I don't want to be misquoted, sometimes these terrorist-minded guys are just brainwashed at one thing, and they may want to justify their anger because they don't have the knowledge of what's really happening.
I only got about 20 seconds left here. The parents at your community, do they agree with this?
Oh yes, most our community is very,
most, not all.
I may have one or two guys now and then will you know, give me a little backlash and say why you did this and why you do that, and then I'll have to get up and give a sermon and do some clarification, and then they would understand. In some case, because most of the times they really look at things from a one side and they don't understand the true picture. And that has always been the problem.
Shaikh, I'll tell you this, you are the most even-handed person that we have spoken to in all this. You're a very peaceful man who believes he has the way to make things a little better for everyone. We wish you a lot of luck, seriously. Please come back. We'll continue to talk.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Shaikh Shafayat Mohamed. Well, let's move on. Critics say law enforcement needs to be retrained after several controversial interactions with their citizens. Certainly we talk about what happened in Staten Island and other places as well. One veteran cop says that is a waste of time. We'll talk to him when we continue right here on MidPoint.